Hello everyone, this is Danish Zedi. Welcome to another episode of PonderCast. So आज की episode बहुत interesting होने वाली है because we have the lawyer as a guest on this particular episode once again. So we will be talking about various human rights conundrums as well as the new post AI world and what it has the impact or the repercussions on the legal fraternity and the problems that are arising due to it. So without any further ado, we have Aliza Masood Reza. She's basically a human rights lawyer, quite eloquent on the pressing human rights issues, and she's currently working with the National Commission for Human Rights. So let's welcome Aliza to the show.
No, it's all right. Thank you for having me.
So I think let's dive right in. I think we can start with the basics. The educational background. Where did you grow up, and the family background that you would like to share.
So I do not come from a legal background. I do come from a background where everybody in my family has been extremely into different professions. So it's just me. I did the University of London degree in 20. I started it in right before COVID happened, which was an experience. Yes, and yeah, I've been in Lahore all my life, so I'm a Lahori Punjabi woman. Yeah.
In terms of I think I was reading your LinkedIn profile. You did medicine as within the A levels, and then you transitioned towards the legal side of things. So how did that transition happen? So is it basically
I think it's
informed decision, or is it?
Yeah. I think you're not really allowed a lot of different combinations for different subjects. At least that wasn't the case in my A levels or in my schooling, which I believe is why. So there was a lack of exposure of different subjects. I grew to appreciate something that you need to know about me is I really am interested in politics, literature, history. They're not the kind of subjects that I had the option of choosing at that point in time, and I love science. I still do. Madly passionate about it. I just wish you had more opportunities to go and explore that subject as opposed to just it being medicine. So I just didn't see a career in that particular field, but as far as the interest is, I'm still very much interested. It's still something that intrigues me. It's still something that I read up on every now and then. But I think the transition happened when I took a brave and bold choice, and I decided to go to law school. And I never regretted it since. Like, it was never one of the things that I regretted. It was like, oh, this is what I wanted to do, and gladly it worked out for me. So there's that.
Sounds inspiring. I also wanted to be a lawyer, but I think I can relate to your experience itself. But I think not everybody has a privilege, so I ended up being the engineer. Transition from that.
I think that's very interesting to talk about that. I think there's a lack of awareness also about what it is to be one, how you're going to be, what it's like to be a part of the system. I think it's just something. I think people have a very deranged idea about it, considering that all they watch is Suits, and my goodness, the amount of Suit memes that I am sent is a whole other thing that I would like to rant about, but I will not. But it's far from being glamorous. I think one of the things that you're reminded of is how difficult it is, and how if you don't really have the patience for it, you're not in the right profession. And my goodness, I'm a very impatient woman. I think my family would agree on that, and so would my very close friends. But it's one of the things that I believe, like you and other students, they don't actually get the proper guidance for choosing that as a profession, and I think that's why they don't even think about it. I mean, with the girls, it's even difficult because it's not seen as a profession for women. And my goodness, I would like to talk about that in this particular podcast because I think that's a very important aspect to touch upon. But yeah, I think there's a lack of guidance when it comes to that. I think it was true for me. I think it's true for so many other people as well.
Yeah, I think I sounds fascinating. I totally get the point. So in terms of, I think you alluded to that. Being a woman in the legal fraternity. So what are the typical challenges? I think let's discuss those while we're at it.
The biggest challenges, I think, I think because of the society that we live in, it's pretty understood to be very patriarchal as it is. And I think the legal profession is only heightens that. You see, because it's already a male-dominated profession, it's seen as something that men are supposed to do. And I think you do get the heightened version of patriarchy, if that's a thing, I would say. But despite that, I think one of the good things is that there's still people that when they see you as a woman, and you don't have a lot of those in the legal profession, there are many that do look up and respect you. because it's something that not every woman can do. Not every woman is encouraged to do. There are a lot of people, like, the concept of doctor brides exists, how you would become a doctor, but you're not allowed to practice. So there are women like that who are allowed to go to law school, but they're not allowed to practice in their particular fields, which is also very true for the legal system, the lawyers that come out, the law graduates that come out, particularly females. I think
Sorry
one
to
of the
get
biggest challenges has to be, yes, no, please go ahead.
so sorry to get you off. I think when you say the lawyer brides or the doctor brides, is it basically the level of docility, or how do you explain the societal behavior if they have some kind of an inclination towards the doctor or the medical profession?
I mean, I think people, if you're talking about why it
Yeah.
happens because, again, people don't really want women to be in the workforce, which is more so the case with, I feel like, law graduates, because, again, it's seen as a male-dominated profession. There's a bit of resistance there. I don't think it's a bit. I think it's a lot. And
Yeah.
I think challenging that stereotype, even when you are a lawyer, is very difficult because people have misconceptions about you. They have misconstrued ideas about what lawyers are. And I think it's because of the lack of the lack of executive function played by regulatory authorities in the matter that has given rise and perpetuated that narrative. Oh, they're gangsters of sorts, or they're mafias of sorts, which is a very sad thing to think, because by the end of the day, you've had amazing people like Asma Jahangir, you've had amazing people like that have come, like the likes of her, that have come in the history of Pakistan and that are actually alive right now, that are trying their level best to fight causes that mean something to them. And I think their voices need to be amplified, because I think people need to see that. I think you need to be mad about something like justice in a country like this, where it's very difficult to get a hold of things. And especially in the recent years, where the political climate has been very unstable. It's been very unstable. It's been very uncertain. People have been very motivated. I think people have been very demoralized, and I do not blame them for that. So when you have a society like that, it's very hard for people to trust the legal system, and of course lawyers as well. So that's a challenge that comes naturally. That's a natural challenge that comes to lawyers. But then I think with female lawyers, it's again very much heightened, because you kind of have to present yourself in a way that the clients that meet you trust you. You want to put yourself in a position where you're taken seriously, but not too seriously. If you're being too serious, then you're not fun. You're just somebody who's mean. If you're somebody who's too fun, you're not seen as somebody who's competent enough. The balance between being this professional person and carrying that professionalism and being good at your job and being competent is very difficult. I think for any professional woman, but I especially think in this particular field, because of the male dominance that exists, because of how it's been for quite some time, because especially the last 2 decades.
Good thing. And I think you talked about Asma Jahangir. So I think in terms of the sacrifices you do as a woman, then the stances that you're taking. So
Yeah.
can you talk about what are the particular challenges that you have seen recently, especially post Asma Jahangir, because she was also talking about certain issues which are more prevalent today uh, versus the time she was alive. So if you can talk about that, and if it has any kind of repercussions for the legal fraternity currently working.
So I think one of the many things that Asma Jahangir talked about was freedom of speech and expression. I think she was pretty, solid in her stance for democracy and attacking, not attacking, but making sure that she talked about the people and making sure that the power rests with the people and not, unheard forces that I would not like to mention on this podcast. So I think it's very important for, it's really interesting that she said this, because I think especially with the delayed elections and then the results of the elections, the way that were conducted, this isn't just about PTI. I think as a lawyer, again, one of the things that I'd like to talk about is how politicized our institutions have become. Your judiciary is not supposed to be politicized. Your bars are not supposed to be politicized. They're supposed to be for the people. They're supposed to be, what is that word I'm looking for? They're supposed to be unbiased when it comes to these particular things. And we've seen this PMLN versus PTI war happening, for the past few years. And I think there's a great chunk of people that are also very sick of it. And I belong to that I belong to that particular percentage of people, because I think it's missing the mark. It's not really about what party is, going through what. And I do think that the crackdown on PTI officials has been unfair and unkind. I do think that. But when I say that, I would have said the same if it had happened to any other party. I think that elections need to be fair. I think they need to be conducted in an appropriate manner. The caretaker government had obviously overstayed its welcome. There were a lot of things that have happened. in the past 2-3 years alone that has sort of made people feel like they don't have that power in their hands, or they don't really have that particular power that they thought they had via a vote. So I think that's exactly what happened after the recent elections. And I also think that, with the ban of Twitter, and then this new promulgation of the Punjab Defamation Act of 2024. I don't know if you had the chance to look at it. It actually allows a new route of defamation trials, and it allows people to be tried for sharing, forwarding any information that could be considered defamatory over WhatsApp, Facebook, Twitter, etc., which is a pretty dangerous sort of act to sort of have. And it's a direct act on Article 19, which has been the subject of much debate in the past 2 years, especially with the caretaker government.
Yeah, I think that's a pertinent question to ask. Regarding judicialization of politics, I think it has been the case that. So, do you think that things have exacerbated further, or do you think that it was always the case that we had this particular judicialization of politics, Saqib Nassar versus the others, and also P 2014 as well? And in the current case where we have the head-on debate between the institutions on that particular front, do you think this is a exacerbated, fight, or is it basically always the case?
I think the grounds for it have been laid down earlier. I do think that there have been certain parties that have used the judiciary to its advantage, and obviously it has found itself and it's materialized itself over the years. So this isn't the first time that you're seeing this happen in Pakistan history. Of course, the way that it's happening, I think people are a little bit more aware now in terms of their history and how it's come about, and how people have taken advantage of. People have used the judiciary to its advantage, and when I say people, I mean certain parties, powerful parties, political parties, to its advantage, which obviously is, again, you've seen that in multiple cases in the past. You've seen the doctrine of necessity being acted out. You've seen it being upheld. So this isn't new. I wouldn't say that it's new. I would say that it's something that is happening much more recently right now, with again, the way that the elections have happened and the way that certain judgments have come out. I do think people think that this is one of those things that's happening currently with the judiciary. I do think that's a narrative that people have, although I would not further like to comment on that. But as long as the question regarding whether I think this is new is concerned, I don't think it's new. I think it has happened in history, and it has materialized over time.
Amazing. Let's go a little back. So I think you work within the National Commission for Human Rights. So how is that particular experience? And for the audience, if you would like to explain what particular cases that are coming towards your way, and what's the ambit?
Yeah. So the good thing about the body is that it's a federal body, and it's actually one of a kind body that was formulated under the NCHR 2012 Act. It's an act that came about in 2012. So it's a very recent commission, and it's very committed to talking about and raising awareness for certain human rights issues. And it's got quite the mandate as well. It's got a judicial mandate. It has its powers to hold suo motu hearings, and it takes cognizance of complaints that it thinks it needs to. So obviously there's a proper structure to it, and there's a proper way as to how we do things. But all of the cases that we deal with human rights violations.
Any particular examples as to what particular spectrum of the complaints that you're?
Well, there's a great spectrum, because human rights abuses, human rights violations don't really discriminate. But obviously, the commission took cognizance of the Tobatik Singh case that happened recently. Very unfortunately, it has been very vocal about its feelings towards minorities, about its understanding towards raising awareness towards minorities, especially those that are very frequently targeted, and cases that deal with children as well, children abuse, child abuse. So there's a great deal of things that come within the human rights realm, really. Yeah.
Sounds amazing. I think I was seeing your another interview, when in that particular interview you talked about, I think it was some kind of post or an interview, if I don't remember. Within that, it was mentioned that somebody said to you, Naqvi Saiba, ye Qanoon ki adalat nahi, insaf ki adalat hai. So from that particular lens, how do you explain the current legal structure? So is it basically that the truth doesn't matter? Is it basically that what you could explain through the law? There are basically the structural moorings of the law, which are basically very puritanical. and within that, you can obviously explain certain things which might be the truth or might not be the truth.
I think, well, that was a TED talk I did on the concept of justice. And I'm a big believer in the fact that, well, it's my understanding that it's something that's very difficult to conceptualize. I think that when we talk about insaf, what do we mean when we say that? Does it mean getting a case to be favored, a court verdict to come out in your favor? Would you think that is insaf? Would you call it something justice? Or, when we think about justice, when we think about insaf, what does that actually mean? What do we mean when we say that? So it was there for the audiences to ponder over, because I feel like it's so much more than just, the institutions of courts to play their role when it comes to dispensing something like justice. I think justice would mean something in the broader abstract term, where we caters to, for instance, solving somebody's murder, but also caters to making sure that incidents like that don't happen again. So, it's about seeing things in a broader picture, in the fairness of it all. I see it as somewhat of a complex, abstract idea, as a concept of sorts. I don't think there's one answer to it. I don't think there's a one-word answer as to what it means or as to what it is. It could mean different things to different people. My idea of justice could be different than your idea of justice, as people. So yeah, I do think that it's one of those things that perhaps isn't meant to be answered, but only meant to be understood to the extent that people should at least understand, when it comes to society and implementation, what it means to actually have or dispense fair and honest justice, at least through the mechanisms that we do have, that is, i.e. law enforcement and, of course, the judiciary.
Good thing. So I think a related question could be, when you say that the law interpretation itself is basically subjective and it depends upon the person's own opinion as to how they project the insaf, so to speak. So do you think that the lawyers can play under the color of the law if somebody whose ideas or the ethics are basically?
So let me rephrase what I said. Let me reiterate what I said. I didn't say that the law itself is उस तरीके से it's the law itself is, let's say, open for whatever you want to interpret it to be. That's not always the case. The law is pretty clear. It's left vague in places where it is meant to be vague for a certain reason. But I'm talking about the bigger, broader concept of justice. I do think that could mean different things to different people. But as far as the law is concerned, it's written. So Pakistan follows a common law precedent system, and our ideas come from एक तो हमारी जो law है basically उसकी primary source is the statute. The statute are acts of parliament that are basically promulgated by Muslim Shura, your parliament, which is your legislature, your lawmaking body. And then your secondary source of your law is the precedents that are set by courts. And both of these technically join together to make the law of the land, which is essentially what is applicable in these courts and on the people. So, of course, interpretation of the law is to be done by a judge. It is to be done by judges and, of course, lawyers where they feel like they have to. But it is mainly done by judges, and statutory interpretation is basically for judges so that they can give effect to the parliament's intention. So you have a law in place. How do you apply that law to the people? That is for a judge to interpret that statute and apply it in a manner that he deems fit. So the many ways and different techniques that it's done, or the techniques that people use, we could discuss that later on sometime. But no, that giving effect to the parliament's intention is essentially what the judges are supposed to be doing. Interpreting the law as a student of law, as of course somebody reading it, is done by different people, of course, but and lawyers when they need to interpret the law. But ultimately, it's something that the judges are supposed to do and give effect to.
Sounds awesome. So if I take a step back, and I think you talked about that in the earlier part of the podcast, in terms of the misogyny you face as an individual, and while you're basically advocating for the fair representation as well. So I think I was again seeing a particular interview of yours. You basically given an example of Aliza Rashid from 1974. In that particular case, do you think that things have progressed since 1974 in terms of the the law parity that we have currently in the Constitution, especially for fair representation and currently on the ground reality as
well? I think as far as progression of women's representation is concerned, I'd say yes. I do think that there are more women in the legal profession now than there were at her time back in 1974. I do think that's a step in the right direction, but do I think There needs to be improvement. Yes, I think there needs to be massive improvements because misogyny hasn't gone anywhere. In fact, some people think it's gone worse. So in some ways, there's some good things and there's some pros and there's some cons there. Uh, I do think that as a society, we are regressing. There's been a moral decline in society, I would say, especially with regards to the growing intolerance towards other people, a lesser acceptance for what people have to say as a whole in society. So उसको सामने रखते हुए अगर हम देखते हैं सब चीजों को तो वुमेन की रिप्रेजेंटेशन तो है मतलब लॉ स्कूल्स में भी अब ज्यादा हो चुकी है और फिर you would know in 2030 it's expected that we're going to be having our first female chief justice of Pakistan, which would have happened a long time ago had other factors not come into play. But so superior courts में भी अदालतों में भी और legal system के अंदर भी अब नजर आना शुरू हुई हैं खवातीन. So I wouldn't exactly say that it's all bad in that particular regard. I do think, however, we fail to have adequate mechanisms to cater to female students, female lawyers, and understanding how our law system needs to be reformed to welcome younger lawyers, to welcome females, etc., etc. I do think that's something that we need to work on. But as a whole, if I talk about it, the numbers are better. They're not great, they're not the best, but they are better.
Sure thing. And just from the standpoint of the women rights, since we are on this particular topic, what are the particular gaps in terms of the law parity that you see versus South Asia and other countries, specifically vis-a-vis the women rights in Pakistan?
If we're talking about as far as people knowing them or the implementation of them?
I think it could be both because implementation is also part.
Yeah. So I think there's a great bridge between the law and the people. But I also think that has everything to do with education because our education system is very bad. So there are a lot of people out there जिनको पढ़ना नहीं आता, जिनको लिखना नहीं आता, उनको बकायदा बताना पड़ता है कि उनकी क्या क्या rights हैं. Very basic rights like the nikah rights to property, rights to inheritance, etc., etc. So I do think that plays the huge role. I think that it's that bridge that exists. And then obviously a greater bridge exists when nobody wants to dispense that sort of awareness either. कि लोगों को बताना, लोगों को ये चीज़ से करना. अब जाके I think ज़्यादा ये हुआ है कि काफ़ी ज़्यादा non-profits, काफ़ी ज़्यादा government initiatives ऐसे आए हैं जिन्होंने इस चीज़ को seriously लिया ज़रूर है. मतलब they have taken it very seriously. They have tried to promulgate helplines. 1413 that was done in collaboration with Masawi at the National Commission of Human Rights. That is a helpline that you can call. It's all over Pakistan now. Regarding marriage rights and any information regarding marriage rights and nikah. So that's something that's again something that is one of the initiatives to bridge that sort of gap. And we need more initiatives like that so that we could serve the people and understand the needs of the people, which is very, very important. Especially women, because I feel like they're more cut off from these particular places. उनको काफी दफा अगर हम देखते भी हैं तो there are more girls outside of school than there are boys. There are more women outside of the workforce than men, and so that also sort of makes a lot of such information inaccessible to them. So we want to have a system in place where information like this is accessible to them as well. As far as other countries are concerned, I think legal awareness, honestly, is very much linked to the earlier point that I was raising regarding education. So if a country has a very good literacy rate, chances are that people are also going to be very well aware of the law. So that's a very interesting link to be seeing in different countries as well. So I do think that's something that needs to be taken into account. Yeah.
Good thing. I think that's a great point, fascinating point. But I think in terms of the literacy, if we talk about the neighboring country, Iran, they have like 97% of the literacy rate. But in terms of the law implementation and the freedoms, as we talk about them, do you think that Iran is a independent country from the lens of their basic freedoms, basic freedoms?
I understand what the revolution. I'm not sure if that's the correct word to use right now that is happening in Iran right now with regards to women's rights, with regards to a whole lot of things. I'm going to have to be a bit more well read in that particular regard, in that particular context. But I have been following some stories from Iran, and I think there's a difference between knowing the law and there being how do I say it? I think there's a difference between being aware of the law and then obviously not being able to do anything about it in terms of other forces that are coming to play. So I do
there are other ingredients also. So yeah, I think I would like to take a detour towards PICA. I think you alluded to PICA ordinance as well. So I have a difference of opinion on that particular front, and I would like your seek your guidance as well. So I think South Asia, in terms of the territory itself, is basically a very complex territory because of the population size and also how we promulgate certain digital rights as well. For
Yeah.
example, if we talk about the social media misinformation, disinformation, we also talk about the deep fakes post AI. So the AI is playing a role where we can have certain deep fakes created. So it is becoming incredibly miserable for the governments to control that kind of narrative. And obviously, there is also a double-edged sword where the country can't uh, would essentially be curtailing certain rights. There could be an abuse of the law itself as well. So how do
Yeah.
we strike a balance in that particular case?
I think that's I think when you talk about digital rights, because it's still an area that I feel like is very much developing in with regards to if especially with regards to Pakistan, because it's very, very new. We and also just around the world also, because we didn't think we'd have AI, but we do have it now. And that's something that we need to now think about. So it's something that's rapidly changing, and framing those rights is particularly important, because what is privacy to a person? What does it mean to, for instance, say कि बंदे की privacy होती है जिसको protect करना है? And to what extent does that apply to somebody, let's say somebody who's going online and using Instagram, and Instagram needs certain information of yours, et cetera, et cetera. So I do think that to a large extent, it has been done by certain statutes in different countries where they've understood that at least ye jo rights in people ke ye jo hai na, these are non-derogable, and these need to be the one that can't be really be that aren't really negotiable. As far as Pakistan is concerned, as far as Speaker is concerned, it could be seen as this. I do see it as a step in the right direction. I do think that it can be worked upon. I do think that, especially in cases of like 2020 showed us as well, with an increase in the use of digital media and digital platforms, there's also been an increase of cybercrimes and cyberbullying and a lot of those things that I do feel like we need stronger mechanisms to cater to. I do think that the 2016 Act was a step in the right direction. I do think it could be improved, yes.
So I was also talking about the polling sway, for example. We saw that in the case of Trump campaign, the Cambridge Analytica case. So similar kind of interventions can happen more easily when it comes to Pakistan, India, or similar countries where regulation is little less stronger than the other countries. So do you have any opinion regarding the political sway the social media has? And if we can do anything about the law?
I think, like I said before, have been multiple attempts to curb freedom of speech, and that doesn't include just publishing. It includes everything online, because I think you and I agree, everything that is done in terms of like even the news, even posts or whatever information, it happens online. So there has been a great effort to sort of curtail that, in different ways. Like I mentioned, the Punjab Defamation Act before, that's not just with regards to what you publish in hard copy, it's with regards to what you send and what you forward, and obviously you're doing that online. So there's been multiple legislative attempts to do that and talks of doing that, and I think we've seen that in the past 2 years. So unfortunately, again, like I would say, it is the case, and it's not something that's unknown it's not something that's also unknown in other countries. Again, it's just something that I feel like Pakistan is currently going through as well, and it's something that is happening at a greater degree now, if you ask me, especially with regards to Article 19, freedom of speech. Your constitution gives you the right to that, with regards to keeping in mind certain restrictions, but it's largely been a subject of debate for a reason, considering that it's being attacked. At least that's what I think. According to me, I do think it's being attacked in different ways. And again, like I said, not just freedom of speech in terms of the speech that you're currently, like physically speech, it's also electronically, whatever you're doing, the things that you're producing, etc., etc.
Yeah, I think it's a great segue. I think we took some bit of the detours, but I think this is a pertinent question. So public awareness, की जहाँ पे हम बात करते हैं, education की बात करते हैं. How do we engage with the communities and general public regarding the raising of awareness, or if we have certain prioritization in order to
I think more initiatives that deal with more common problems, and not just problems that are a lot bigger on the front. There need to be more common problems in the sense that people need to be more aware about how to lodge an FIR, lawyers that should be available to do that for you, lawyers that could help you, perhaps pro bono lawyers. Again, they are overworked and they are underpaid, so I don't believe in people exploiting them either. But I do think that there could be initiatives that could cater to smaller, not I wouldn't necessarily say smaller problems, but more common problems of the people, which I feel like a lot of people would. It would be really good if they knew what their rights would be in certain instances, especially related to property, related to inheritance, related to custody. These are all problems that we get. These are all cases that we get a lot of. Maintenance problems, especially for women, rights to divorce. What's going to happen if I leave my husband because he's not treating me right? There's been a rise in divorce cases, and my goodness, that has given that there's without fail every single week. There's always a question that we have from different people, different women, where that goes like, okay, what do I do? What are my options when it comes to divorce? So family law again is also one of the things that is just family law, property law, and then all of these other things that come into play, which I feel like are very important for people to discuss. They're just generally some things that people need to know about. So I think that information it is being dispensed by some very good initiatives. You have the Digital Rights Forum, the DRF, doing amazing work when it comes to online rights. You've got that. You've got the domestic abuse helpline. I'm forgetting the page that they have on Instagram, them sort of raising awareness for domestic abuse. You have different NGOs that have different causes that they fight for. You've got Musavi that deals with marriage rights, that has literally published an entire diagnostic study on marriage rights. And I think it's really refreshing to see a lot of different people, a lot of different entities come about to raise voices on particular issues, which is again something that I think is newer to the legal field, which I don't think existed before, and even if it didn't exist the way that it does now. So I do think that it's happening, and I do hope that it tends to happen in a manner that is more effective. I do think that there could be a way that very easy information can be dispensed to the people, and that could be done in schools. It doesn't have to be, or in my schools, I mean universities. You could have courses that teach you these things. It could be called Law 101. I don't know, whatever you want to call it. And that's also why we, even at Aliza, we have very simple workshops about very simple things. Things like, okay, what are you going to do if XYZ happens to you? Or what are you going to do if this is what you want to do? And they're very simple questions. But trust me, the more simple that is, the harder it is for people to actually know the answer to it, which is very concerning, which I said before, that there's this bridge that needs to be, there's this gap that needs to be bridged. So it's happening, and I just hope that it turns out to be more effective. Yeah.
That's awesome. Sounds amazing. So as we lean towards the end, I think for one particular question I would have is for the young professional in this particular human rights advocacy field, law profession. What are the advices that you would like to give in order for them to have a rewarding, experience, as well as promulgate a change for the impact of
society? Recommendation to people, you mean, or
just the aspiring lawyers or the aspiring, basically, the human rights?
Okay. To everybody in general, I would say you need to have grit. You need to have perseverance. You really need to have grit and perseverance and a lot of patience. I think you know how a lot of the times you see people in different fields and they're moving up, and it's just very steady for them. It's very simple. Law isn't really a profession like that. It comes, you bear the fruit, I would say, very slowly. For some people it happens fast. It really just is about luck and fate, really. But you really, really need to know whether this profession is for you or not. You need to understand that it comes with a lot of hard work. It comes with a lot of issues as well. Beginning, turn into somebody or bring out the person within you that the law requires. And I think that's, a lot of people don't really realize that, because in the beginning they're like, oh, we're depressed, we don't know if this is for me. It's a very natural thing to feel. So if you're feeling that way, it's okay. Trust me, you're on the right path if you feel that way. It's a very normal and a very natural feeling to have. Secondly, I think it also, to women especially, I would say this, because I am one. I've seen girls, I teach girls, and younger girls that are very bright and very young. They make me very happy because I get to see them and I get to talk to them and I get to ask them about their different aspirations, especially women that are either in law school or already graduated or thinking about it. You really need to learn how to stand your ground. You really need to be the person that puts their foot down and says, well, this is what I want, this is what it is, this is what I'm going to get. You need to be very firm in your principles. You need to be very firm in your morals. You need to understand that there are going to be people out there that are going to want to bring you down. And it's being done because they cannot stand you either succeeding or you getting better than your better version of your past version of yourself. And there are going to be times where you're going to feel like perhaps you're in the wrong place, but that's not true. This is your space. This was always your place. This was always your space, and it's about you reclaiming that space. So I think it's really important for them to know that.
Yeah, I think that's a fascinating point. I think it's true for the public spaces, more so in the legal fraternity as well, I think. So thank you so much, Aliza. I think it was a fascinating experience overall, and I think it would be beneficial for the the audience as well. So thank you so much for taking the time out and joining us.